Okay, everybody, it's Tuesdays with Ted, and I'm Ted Padromo, and we're going to have some fun today. Our little warm up call here. We're having a good time. So, welcome, Tina.
Thank you, Ted. It's always a great time hanging out with you. It's always fun.
So, what are we talking about today?
Well, you asked me to dance for the crowd, so maybe I should start there.
Sing and
no,
dance. I didn't say just dance.
no, that's true. That's true. So today we're actually going to talk about becoming unstoppable. It's my favorite topic to talk about.
And tell us a little about your background, what you do.
So my background is 30 years in corporate. I have spent 30 years growing leadership. And that whole conversation we just had before this, you could tell how passionate I got about it. Growing leadership skill set, mindset, and tool set for people. During the pandemic, I decided that corporations had all the resources in the world, entrepreneurs had none. And so I started helping entrepreneurs in small organizations or mid-sized organizations actually develop their leadership skill set, mindset, and tool set as well. So that's what I did. But I had an interruption in the middle of it. And that is what we're talking about today. I had an interruption in my life that caused me to relook, rethink, and relearn just about everything.
And what was that?
So before we do that,
Okay,
can we play along a little bit for a minute?
sure,
Can I get you to do something with me?
sure, maybe.
I love that. You didn't even say maybe till later. I love that. You trust me so much. So I just want you to do a little something with me because I'm gonna really ruin your audience's ears right now, but I'm gonna sing a little quick clip and I want you to do something with me. Ready? If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Yes. Ted, that is something I couldn't do for a very long time. I could not actually make my hands go together.
Really?
Really. I actually was, and you would expect that if it's a young child, right? But I was an executive at 40 years old and found myself not being able to clap. My hands simply passed by each other. I went from having all of my dreams, all of my goals, crushing everything and living the life that I dreamt of. That's what I wanted, to an accident changing everything literally in a split second.
Wow.
And I was functioning like a 3-year-old child. I was left with the functioning of a 3-year-old child at the age of 40 without good prognosis, without much belief that I would get a whole lot better. Now, spoiler alert for you, I don't function like a young child anymore, but I still act like one sometimes.
I can relate to that.
I love that about you. I think that's why we have so much fun when we're together. So, Ted, it was as simple as having a day that was like the day. Have you ever had one of those days when you're just on fire and everything is going perfect? Have you ever had that?
Oh, yeah.
I hope you've had a lot of them. I hope everyone has had a lot of them. This one particular day was that for me. And I was training for a marathon. And it was one of those days when it was effortless. You could hear your cadence on the leaves. It was just so perfect. I actually said out loud, I said, "This is the run of a lifetime." Little did I know that it actually was going to become the run of my lifetime.
Wow.
As I was running, a tree snapped, fell, and hit me. It created brain damage, making my brain bounce off the sides of my skull, created enormous brain damage, and it also caused damage to my low back, leaving me functioning like a very young child.
Wow.
Yeah. Not something you ever expect when you go for a run. And in fact, I've got a lot of runners in my world who say to me now, I cannot run without seeing trees on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ted, I found myself in a situation where I had memory loss, I had damage, I had so much going on inside of me that what I knew as life was radically different. I needed 24/7 care. Someone had to feed me, they had to help me walk, they had to help me do everything. And then I had to do something that most people never do in life. I had to learn how to learn all over again.
Wow.
And that is how this whole story of becoming unstoppable came to be. Is the doctor said I would never get better. The doctor said she may get a little bit better. First of all, they told my husband, she's a living miracle. The reason you don't hear about people getting hit by trees is they don't survive it.
Yeah.
That's number one. And number two, the few that do survive it don't heal to a place they can talk about it. Granted, most people listening right now are not going to be hit by a tree, and I certainly don't wish that on anyone. But we all go through some type of disruption or change in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And mine is just such a drastic story of it that it helps you to see yourself and how you too can get to where you want to get to. So it's really a story that everybody can apply in their life, especially the life lessons. Now, it happened 15 years ago. So it's
Wow.
been 15 years. And it was not always where I could sit and talk with you like this.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was a process by all means. And it took me years of being in an adult body, functioning like a young child, watching other adults to create the life lessons that are inside this book. You think about this. When children are together, the children play with the children and the adults are hanging out with the adults.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be the adult hanging out with the adults that saw them like a child.
Wow.
It was the greatest experiment ever. And it really creates some life lessons from views that people just don't get to see.
Yeah.
So,
So you get to watch these adults act like children, and they don't realize they're acting like children a lot of times.
I still get to watch adults act like children. And I say this probably no lie. I say this at least a dozen times, if not even 30 or 40 times in the book. Adults are so weird. They
Mm-hmm.
complicate everything.
Yep.
And so I broke down the different ways in which I got from where I was to where I am, and repeatedly said, adults are so weird. We make it so hard on ourselves when it really doesn't have to be.
Yeah. That's amazing. Kind of reminds me of Gary Barnes' story about the beaver.
It is. Actually, that's how I found Gary, because Gary obviously has an adversity story as well. And someone who's probably listening right now said to me, you need to meet Gary Barnes. He's got an adversity story too. And Gary and I just clicked right away. And we said, one day we will share a stage together. I didn't know it would already happen, but we said one day we would share a stage together, and we have. But the truth of the matter is, there is not a single one of us in this world that doesn't go through something,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's job loss, marriage or divorce, kids moving away and you're not having any idea what you want to do with your life next. I mean, everybody goes through some type of change. You could get a great change, a promotion, and all of a sudden your world's still turned upside down because it's a promotion that makes you change your roles, your friends, your everything else. Everybody deals with change. And that's really what the essence of this story is, and how to navigate it.
Yeah. Boy, yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head here. We have those
Well,
days where they're on fire, and other days like, oh my God, I can't get out of bed.
okay, so I actually say you have your days on fire, and have the days you feel like you've been set on fire.
Well, that's it. Exactly.
Oh, but
Yeah.
the other thing that happened in the midst of this, Ted, is that I didn't have the ability to do life the way that I knew to do life, right? Because as my memories started coming back, some of the things that I had learned in my past life and teaching leaders how to hit and reach their goals, I tried to apply them to myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I don't know if you're familiar. I know you're familiar with. I don't know if you're a believer in the work of Jim Collins and the BHAGs and the big, hairy, audacious goals and all of that. I was the queen of helping people set BHAGs and just smash them. That's what I did. Helped
Yeah.
people really reach results. But I found myself not being able to do that. It was just too big and too audacious. It was too far out of the realm of possibility for me. When you can't stand by yourself, it's too far outside your possibility to think that I'm going back to be an executive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I always said throughout the entire thing, I want to be me again. Well, let's back up. From the point in time I could actually put words together again, I said, I want to be me again. And so that was always where I wanted to go, but it was just too big. And
Yeah.
I had to break it down. And what I found is something that is still mind blowing to me now, all these years later. The number of people around me who could not say what they wanted or where they wanted to go was astronomical. They were masterful
Hmm.
at saying what they did not want,
Yeah.
but could not say what they did want. And so, being childlike, I would ask questions like, well, what do you want?
Right.
And the answer was always a blank stare. And then we would have a conversation and I would pull out more and pull out more. Or my other question was, well, that's not good. That's only what you don't. What do you? And they'd be like, what? What are you talking about? We don't even realize how often we talk about the things we don't want in lieu of the things we really do want. And let's be honest, especially if you're in a high level role, a power position, no one wants to fail. And once you say to the world, I want to do this, you stand that possibility of failing,
Yeah.
but you also have the potential of enormous success. But many of us are afraid to just say it out loud. Have you ever experienced that?
My son used to bust me all the time when he was home. He's growing and off now, but I would say something like, I can't do that. He
Mm,
said, why not? That's all he would say. Like, why not?
why not?
And my default answer was always negative because my mother was always, you can't do that.
That is so funny because what I described things as, because again, I was functioning like a child, I had to describe them in words that I knew.
Hmm.
And I called it the I can't. I can't do. I can't. So I would say, you're an I can't. So,
Right.
Ted, you were an I can't. Your son was calling you an I can't in that moment. But
Yeah.
it is so, so easy for us to say what we don't want and so hard for us to actually say out loud what we do want. But if you don't ever own it, it's like a ship. If you don't have a destination, it's not going to arrive there. In the book, I write about this. I write that it's like opening your refrigerator and taking out all the ingredients you have, mixing them together, and hoping that you're going to make fettuccine Alfredo out of it. You know, peanut butter just does not work well in fettuccine Alfredo, but you're just hodgepodging it together until you know exactly where you want to go and what you're going to create. You're never going to get that thing. And people are just afraid to say it out loud.
Some reminds me of my brother-in-law. He was a Mr. Overdo everything, eat too much, drink too much, smoke too much. And his doctor said to him one day, says, you better watch where you're going because someday you're going to get there very soon.
Mm,
And he did,
love that.
unfortunately, and he passed away way
Mm,
before his time. But
sorry
he
to
had a
hear.
goal, the wrong goal.
He had the wrong goal. He had an absence of a goal. He had the
Right.
absence of a goal.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But it's not easy to say what we want.
Right.
And if I walked around today and asked 100 people what they want next, what's their next thing? The number one thing I would hear, and I know this because I've been doing this for years. If I ever walk up to somebody in public, I'll be like, "Hi, I'm Tina, and da da da." And what do you want to do? What's your great aspiration? They're
Yeah.
like, just stop, leave me alone, strange woman. But the answer is usually, I don't know.
Right.
And in a 20-minute conversation, I find out most times they absolutely know. They're just afraid of saying it out loud.
Yeah. Because if you don't get there, you're embarrassed and you put it
Correct.
out publicly.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And without that first step, we're never going to reach what we want to reach. For me, that step literally meant taking this little tiny plastic cup filled with little tiny plastic peas and a little tiny pair of plastic tweezers and taking a pea out of the cup and moving it to another cup and dropping it. I had to relearn my fine motor skills. And
Wow.
some days it would take me 8 hours to move a pea from one cup to another. Other days I could move them all in an hour, but that's where I had to start with the where I wanted to go. My first step, my first where I want to go was tiny. It
Yeah.
wasn't some BHAG. It wasn't this, you know what, I'm going to cook a meal for my family. Are you kidding? I couldn't touch pots for a long time because I burned myself or burned something or someone every single time I tried to do it. So I had to start so teeny tiny. And we think that tiny doesn't matter. But moving those peas one at a time is what actually got me to the place I could take the next step. So
Hmm.
when somebody's getting overwhelmed, I say to them all the time, and maybe someone listening right now is feeling a little bit overwhelmed, just take it 1 P at a time. That's all you have to do. Just commit to, I'm going to move that one little tiny P in front of me.
Right.
And then you move to the next thing. And now I set major things. I mean, I wrote a book, by the way. I could not put two words together when this happened. And I wrote a book that became a best-selling novel, Outthinking, Think and Grow Rich, Outranking, Think and Grow Rich. So little steps create giant movements. So
Yeah.
don't ever think something is too small for you to do.
I get that all the time from people. I'm afraid to log LinkedIn. I don't know what to do on LinkedIn. I said, log in once a day, scan through and just look for people you know. And that's a good start. Just spend 5 minutes a day just scrolling around and then start interacting with people. That's the next step.
You remember that whole thing I said earlier about how humans, especially adults, are really, really weird? We make things complicated, right? That's exactly it, Ted. Giving them that one step to do, that one tiny thing, makes it doable and permissible. And that's what we don't do for ourselves. You can do that for someone else, but it's a lot harder to do it for ourselves. So giving ourselves the grace and space to actually do something small and not judge it as not big enough. Because let's be fair, if I had judged my moving 1P at a time to everybody else around me, I would have been a complete and utter failure because everybody else could do a million things I could not even begin to think of doing. And
Right.
if I would have judged myself as a failure, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
Yeah. And think of all the people here that have never had that life-changing moment and they're
Right?
still afraid to take that little step.
That's exactly it. And I don't want anybody to get hit upside the head with a tree to try to wake you up to take that tiny step. Don't do that. That's not advised. But what
Right.
is advised is doing it anyways. Do that one little tiny step on your own. And you don't have to tell anybody else you're doing it. Do it on your own. Say to yourself, I will do it. Make the commitment to yourself and then do it. And then after you have, tell people and celebrate it. If you're truly that afraid of actually saying it out loud to people, you can still do it on your own. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah. It's just you're bringing me back to my mother and my son. And it's kind of like, you can't do that. Why would you want to do that? Like, well, I got to go to school. I got to do this. I got to do that.
It's all right, Ted. You can boxer me every day. I'll help you out.
Yeah. So once you kind of get through that first step or so, like, do you just set a series of goals that get you to the big goal?
So I'm going to break down the first couple of steps that I did myself. First was actually deciding what I was going to do, which was moving that P. The second thing really had huge impact on me, and that's knowing who I was. When you have a life-altering situation, your values change. And I've met with literally hundreds and hundreds of other people who haven't had life-altering things, whose values have changed over time, but they've not taken stock of it. They have not taken the opportunity to look. And the reason we need to know our values is because we have to make a lot of decisions in this world. And if you don't know who you are, you don't know how to make the best decisions for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So assessing your values and setting that first tiny knowing where you're going thing, assessing your values, and then setting your goals. And I'm not a fan of 5-year goals, 1-year goals. Break it down into quarterly goals that you then enact daily.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, and I'm sure you've seen the rocks exercise, it's been around for 20 years. And I first saw it by a coach of mine back 20 years ago or more. And I was enthralled by it. Now everybody's seen it. But the reality is, if you don't put the right rocks or the right things in the right order, you're not going to get everything to fit in. So setting those priorities. And I tell people all the time, set three goals. 3. That is it. And they are not all work. You are not just a working being. You're a human being.
Right.
So, or you're not a doing being either. So you get a chance to not do. So take care of yourself, take care of your family, and take care of your career. Those are the 3 that I want people to set. And it's amazing when you actually talk through that, because most people set 3 work goals, and that's great. You can set 3 work goals, but don't set the next work goal until you've accomplished one, so that you're perpetually moving everything in your life forward equally. I don't believe in work-life balance. I don't think there is such a thing as work-life balance. I believe it's more like an orchestra where you actually have instruments that play in longer stretches and louder at certain times, and it still becomes a beautiful sound.
Yeah.
And that's how work happens. Sometimes work is more than family, and sometimes family is more than work. You have to ebb and flow with it. One of the people who's in my space who actually had a brain injury and now talks a lot about how to maximize your brain is Jim Quick. And Jim talks about this all the time. He talks about work-life harmony, and that's a word that I have loved for years, even before Jim. It definitely is something that people need to create. So creating work-life harmony with those 3 goals that you break down into, what am I doing today?
Right.
And if you can't answer that question, I'm going to say something radical. Stop working in your business for an hour. Stop. Don't
Yeah.
do anything in your business and go work on your business and set that next thing. Because if you don't, you're never going to get there. You're going to end up making peanut butter fettuccine Alfredo. That's what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
making sure you do those 3. And then there are 2 key pieces to the actual goals. You actually have to have a plan. Write it down. I cannot tell you how many people do not write it down. I don't understand that piece. You have it in your head, write it down. The likelihood of you accomplishing it goes up exponentially. You want to really hit the success of that goal and hit over 95% success, add in a measure of accountability. So I call it the goals, plans, and accountability piece of it so that you're taking action and living out those goals. And that's really how I got back to where I am. 1 P at a time. In each goal, when I did it, all right, I had to learn to walk. I had to learn to ride a bicycle and not fall off. Apparently, when you have a brain injury, falling off your bike is really concerning to people. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But then I had to learn to drive a car. Oh my gosh, driving a car. I had no idea. This is a funny for you. I had no idea that I had lost my peripheral vision. And I was a little bit stubborn about the fact that
No.
I wanted my freedom back. And when you can't drive, you lose freedom, right? I mean, think about what you felt like at 15. You couldn't go anywhere, right?
Right.
So take it away from somebody who's had it for 20 years, and it's really hard. So I actually nagged, that will be the right word, the occupational therapist to the point where she actually gave in and gave me the test to see whether or not I was capable of driving. Now, the funny thing is, I could use my hands or my feet at the time. I couldn't use them both together. So that meant I would steer or I would press the gas, and I would steer or I would press the brake. So clearly I was not ready to drive, but I was still there. I was still pushing for it. What we found, though, by her doing that exercise is I had lost my peripheral vision, and I ran over well over 100 pedestrians on the test. So it
Oh,
was clear I was not going to be driving anytime soon.
wow. That's amazing.
I'm just really thankful that I didn't like convince them to let me drive, because that would have been a really bad day.
Oh, God, yeah. It kind of makes me think we're at the stage. We have a friend that's having some problems and he can't drive anymore.
Mm.
And I have vertigo, so I can't drive long distances anymore. So
It
I
definitely
can't jump
changes
in the
your
car
life.
and drive 200 miles or 100 miles even.
It changes your life when you can't drive as much. It really, truly does.
Yeah.
But when you say, in what is it that we can do? I mean, we can cross our chasm, whatever our chasm is. Now, mine was giant. Okay.
Yeah.
I had to go from 3-year-olds back to, and here's the other thing. Um, I decided, because I did a lot of deciding, and we all need to do a lot of deciding. I decided that I wanted to go back and be an executive again. And I did. I made my way back to being an executive again. And I stayed there for quite a few years. And then I woke up one day and said, why did I want to do this? Why did I want to be an executive again? And the truth of the matter is, and I have not actually shared this publicly with anybody, so you're the first to hear this. I had this aha moment a few weeks ago. The truth of the matter is, I wanted to prove to myself that I was back to being me.
Mm.
I wanted to be me again. Well, now I'm working with executives, I'm working with leaders, I'm working with people that are helping them to become the better leader that they can, the best leader they can possibly be. But I didn't need to be that anymore. And it was interesting to me because it took the slowdown during the pandemic, which was not a slowdown in my world at all. It sped up a million times because I was taking care of like 1,000 people, about 800 people I was taking care of at that time. And it really caused me to pause and say, what is it that I really want to do next? And I'm sure some of your listeners or some of the people that are watching us right now are in that same space.
Yeah.
And what you can do in that moment when you're in that chasm, which you don't know where you want to go and don't know what you want to do, it's do that next one tiny thing and go explore it.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with exploring what you like and you don't like. There's nothing wrong with it. So I think people get stuck in the I've always done this, I have to do this.
Right.
Otherwise, they feel like they will be in this giant chasm. And I don't want anybody to feel like you can't take that one tiny step because, spoiler alert again, I took that tiny step. And if I could do it from not being able to walk, talk, or feed myself, I'm 100% certain you can do it from where you are.
Yeah. I can relate to that. When my corporate career kind of disappeared,
Mm,
it's like, oh, I want to get back to that. And then you wrote something today I saw online about solopreneurs and being lonely.
yes.
I've been back and forth with jobs and on my own for years. Now I'm like, I'm in that lonely stage.
Yes. It is. Trust me, I love, and I'm sure you do too. I love the people I work with, but most people I work with are all on Zoom
Yeah.
or all on some other platform of some kind. So I don't, and I'm just going to say it. I got so excited a week ago. I had 3 in-person things I did. And the first thing I said to each of them, I met with the CEO of a health system, had a wonderful breakfast, all kinds of business and all kinds of stuff we talked about. But I looked at him and I said, "You have feet. I am so excited you have feet." But
Yes.
you don't have that same connection. And going to an event with a group of people and you're in the event for a day is not the same as having that true connection you used to have in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that is something that I think a lot of us in the entrepreneurial space are really, really struggling with. And I don't think most of us even have the space to get together with people on Zoom and even connect. So I think we're missing connection overall right now.
Yeah. I wrote about that last week, talking about the old water cooler. We'd go hang out and talk
Mhm.
about what we watched on TV the night before. And like
Yes.
now we stream everything. So we can't talk about that. But,
Yes.
and
Well,
we
and
don't
we don't
have
have
those
a
water
cooler.
coolers.
There, there is that, Ted. Oh my gosh.
I'm so excited because my wife thinks I have all these pretend friends, but we're going to Europe and I'm going to actually see one of my clients in Budapest, and then I'm going to see one of my colleagues in Germany. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to meet people I've only seen on Zoom. This is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I am an international speaker that came out of the fact that I now have clients and friends in countries all over the world. I mean, I've done work in South Africa. I didn't even know anybody in South Africa. I mean, this is just such a very different landscape than it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Bella says she saw her family twice in the last 2 months and loved it.
Mm. Love, love, love it.
It's
Love
funny,
it.
my son's working remote. He lives in San Diego now, but his office is in San Francisco. He was home last week, and there's a few people in the office actually. Now they went out for happy hour.
Oh my goodness, I love it.
And it's like, oh my God. And they stayed out till 10 o'clock.
I love it. I love it. It's a
So,
different world. Like I said, I met with the president and CEO of a health system, and they're all working hard to bring people back into the workplace. He was telling me about meetings he had been holding with other business owners because people are first of all, the restaurants and the businesses in the area are struggling because there's nobody there to do lunch anymore that they used to support these entities and so forth. But then there's also the diversity of thought when people come together. And then there's also the mental health of people being home isolated from one another for so much. So it really is a bigger conversation that's happening. But the entrepreneurial space is full of people who really need connection.
yeah, I hear you.
That's why we're together right now.
All right. So to kind of summarize, I'd say you got to set a goal.
You got to know where you're going. You have to know who you are. You have to set a goal. And then you have to ask the right thoughts, have right thoughts and ask the right questions. And that's the other thing that came out of all this, Ted. And I talk a lot more about this inside the book as well and give so many really cool stories. So many people have said, I feel like I was reading along with my best friend talking to me in the middle of it because it's almost like I'm inside your head because I watched so many adults do all of this. But one of the things that you have had created for me was a new insatiable curiosity, like a childlike curiosity. And as my memories got better and as things came back and my functioning came back, the curiosity started to die out like it did for most of us from childhood. And I absolutely positively refused to let it go. So now I am the most annoying person to stand next to in line because I will ask you a million questions, getting to know you and getting to learn all about you. And I've made literally hundreds and thousands of friends just by being that curious person. And that's what I encourage us all to do, is go back and find that curiosity, because it really makes a difference in how we get to where we get to. So making sure that we're asking ourselves the right questions. And I talk a lot more about it in detail in the book. Is the right questions is what will change your life. And then the last part, the whole last section of the book, is about having the right aim, because if you're not shooting at the right thing, you're never going to hit it. And that's having the right attitude, inspiration, and motivation. And I talk all about the I can'ts, or the other part that I saw that I named the winning. And it's not win, it's WHEN. People are winning. And that's what I heard all the time. Winning, 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 winning. When I get this, when I do that, when I do this. And so I talk a lot about that inside there too. So I would love, you know what, if it's all right with you, I would actually offer to anyone listening, they can go grab the first lesson of the book if they want to read that and understand a little bit more, because I'll tell you another little secret is I talk a lot about imposter syndrome in the first lesson as well.
Ooh, that's a whole nother call we could do.
It is. I love talking about imposter syndrome. So I actually did a course on perfectly imperfect, and I had people show up to the course and say, can you please just make sure nobody knows that I'm here, because I don't want anyone to know I'm a perfectionist. Okay, we already know you're a perfectionist.
I love it. So your website's successcoachingsolutions.com.
It is, and you can go to the resources tab and it will start you off on your journey. If you've not read Standing Strong, and I'll tell you why I named it that in a moment, Standing Strong, the real life story of overcoming adversity and becoming unstoppable. It is an Amazon bestseller. You can get the free first lesson. You can buy the book there. You can get some other resources there after you finish the book. You can hang out in my world and just continue to become more and more unstoppable. So 2 quick things. Do we have time?
Sure.
Awesome. So I want to tell you why I named it Standing Strong. I told you in the beginning of the story that I couldn't stand for myself. And one day I was trying to stand and my husband started to grab my arm and I couldn't put words together yet. Like the words hot and dog could not come out of my mouth to ask for a hot dog yet. And that's a whole story we'll do another day. Ketchup, oh, the bane of my existence. We'll talk about that one day too. But so I held up one finger, and he had come to learn that meant give me a moment, like I'm trying to process something. He had no idea what I was processing, but he stood real close by my guard, like making sure I didn't fall, because my gait was wobbly. My whole I was a mess. That's my technical definition, by the way, of what I was, is a mess. So he went to grab my arm and I held up my finger. And he kept saying to me, are you okay? Are you okay? Because he wasn't sure if I was going into a seizure or not. Right. And I just kept my finger held strong. And he kept saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And then finally I was able to say 3 words to him. I was able to say, I stand strong. And that's why I named this book Standing Strong. I was going to name it Stand Strong, but people thought that was a protest book. And I did not want to have a protest book. So it's very important that we actually put stuff out to a target audience to have them give us feedback on before we do anything. For all of you entrepreneurs listening right now, that was a huge lesson.
Tunnel vision.
Thank you. Thank you. That's exactly it. Take your little blinders off. So I named it Standing Strong. And I do think that all of us have the ability to stand strong. And then the last thing that I want to drop here, Ted, is the fact that I believe with every ounce of fiber in my being that the biggest challenge that we all face is to become all that we have the possibility of becoming. And my challenge to all of you is to become unstoppable at becoming what's possible for you.
That's awesome. Bella shivering. She loves your story.
Oh, Bella, thank you for showing up. I'm so excited to see you here with us.
So this is great, Tina. It's been amazing. I learned so much about you I didn't know.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of people know me as the executive coach and the leadership coach and all of that. They just don't know that I had a whole period of life in between there that was completely different. And I bring all of that to my clients too. And here's the thing. my being so vulnerable lets other people be super vulnerable. So it makes it such a different relationship. So Ted, I'm really glad we got to talk about it. I'm really glad we got to hang out together. And I'm really glad for your people that you didn't have me dance.
Yeah, and sing. We'll do that on another call.
We will. We've got so many calls we need to do now.
Sounds good. Okay, well, thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.